Okay, welcome Sarah and friends to a night with Scott Yonally. I am pleased to announce that Sarah has unanimously endorsed Scott Yonally for Director of the Great Lakes Division of the ARRL. And we are here this evening to give you an opportunity to ask your questions and get your answers directly from Scott. And we'll the format will be very casual. Scott's going to start with a brief PowerPoint just to whet your appetite, and then we'll turn to whatever questions that you may have. With that, let me turn it over to Scott. Take it away, Scott.
Good evening. Well, first off, I'd sort of like to come on with live from New York, but I'm not from New York. I'm live from Virginia. We're here on some other business and some personal business that we need to take care of. But it's good to be here with everybody tonight. And I do want to thank Jason and Gary and all of the SARA group for putting this on. Some of you don't know who I am, and so I want to kind of give you a little introduction as to what I've done in the past and where I plan to take the Great Lakes Division for the future. As you can see on the screen, I have been representing amateur radio to the public in various capacities for more than 40 years. I am currently your vice director for the Great Lakes Division, and I am running for the director position. Our current director is going to step down. He's retiring, and he's been doing this for quite a long time and has now decided that it's time for him to step aside and move on with other things. I'm an official relay station. I'm also an official emergency station. As an official relay station, you'll find me in the honor roll every month and listed in QST. I'm also a vice chair of the Richland County Local Emergency Planning Committee, and I'm a member of the Ohio Public and Private Partnership, OP3. This year, I was honored to receive the Alan Severson Memorial Award. That is the Ham of the Year for the state of Ohio. I really am appreciative of that. In 2019, I was honored by the Board of Directors of ARRL as the Joe Knight Distinguished Service Award recipient. This award is given to section managers only, and it's only a handful of section managers throughout the country that's ever received that award, and I'm one of them, and I'm very proud of that as well. Family support is absolutely vital to any of these positions, especially with the director, because it does require a lot of time away from home. My wife of 52 years, Janie, KB8YPW, she's also an ARRL member. And as you can see by the picture, she helps out in a lot of the many hamfests that we do attend, as well as club meetings and that type of thing. You'll see her around. So her support is absolutely vital, and I do have that. In my professional career, prior to retirement, I served as a senior staff member and quality manager in the automotive and defense industry, making strategic decisions and leading the organization toward its goals. I did lead a 25-person, 3-shift department of quality professionals, and I was responsible for the procurement of millions of dollars of assembly and test equipment, which taught me how to manage large, complex budgets and timelines, and give me the best business knowledge needed to help ARRL through these trying financial times. In my first 100 days, my plan for the first 100 days as your director and my commitment to you is very vital, I think. And I think that both, not only me, but my opponent needs to make this very clear as to what our commitment is to you for those first 100 days. So here's my commitment to you. I will complete a round of proactive ARRL leadership and board outreach discussions. I'm going to reach out to all of the directors and vice directors, along with the president and CEO, to find a common ground to build a consensus of action that we can take to support ARRL member needs. I will partner with our new vice director, Roy Hook, to complete these conversations. I will take solid steps to improve communications and collaboration within the division by scheduling regularly quarter division cabinet meetings with all three of the section managers in the division. I will modernize our division's newsletter, making it more robust and interesting. It will incorporate pictures and interesting articles from around the division, and it will be easily downloadable for you to save and read anytime you want. And I will do surveys asking for your input on many subjects. Getting your input is vital to our Great Lakes Division health and well-being for every member of the division. A simple 1 or 2 question survey every few weeks will go far in keeping the lines of communication open and collaborative. Youth programs are very vital importance. And my vision for younger people to get involved is live streaming, just like we're doing right now, and access to remote stations. They're great ways to make it easier for younger people to learn about ham radio. STEM learning in schools. It's another important way to help the next generation of young people by building useful kits, high altitude balloons, fox hunting, and other similar activities that will provide practical applications and support STEM learning. The ARRS program, the amateur radio on board the International Space Station. It's another great way for youth groups around the world to experience the excitement and learn about amateur radio and use it to communicate with the astronauts on board the International Space Station. And finally, the Teachers Institute program, which is totally funded by ARRL and is also another great way to get amateur radio into the classrooms. Getting these young folks on the air is very important, and we should all routinely make our stations available to new and young hams so they can participate in on-air activities. I support these initiatives and will work hard as your Great Lakes Division Director to advance these programs and many more that contribute to the future growth and vitality of our youth and our hobby. NCOM. I do practice what I preach. I've always been a strong promoter and a hands-on player in the amateur radio emergency communications arena. As an ARRS Assistant EC, I was tasked with supervising Skywarn program. This fueled my passion even more for emergency communications. A few years later, I was appointed as District Emergency Coordinator with even more responsibilities. As a section manager, I got the Ohio ARRS program deeply involved with the Ohio Public and Private Partnership, as well as the Emergency Management Association of Ohio, involving ARRS even deeper into our statewide emergency response system. I have the honor of serving as Vice Chair of the Richland County Local Emergency Planning Committee, and as such, I'm always keeping amateur radio in the forefront with all of our community leaders. Why am I running for director? Some people think I'm nuts. Well, quite frankly, I don't. The Great Lakes Division does deserve to have experienced leadership. I have a proven, extensive ARRL field organization experience at all levels, which has given me a much stronger knowledge of how to solve many of the issues we now face. I have delivered. I've led the charge to greatly increase the club commission program to make it more lucrative and easier for clubs to take advantage of. I also led the charge to make all affiliated and special service club anniversary dates expire at the same time, making it much easier for the clubs to remember when to renew. Created positive public and private agency awareness support for ARRS and amateur radio through OP3 and the EMAO. I've ensured effective, open, and two-way communication between the ARRL and its membership, and I will continue to deliver. I'm passionate about this hobby, as most of you know. I'm a straight shooter, and I don't put on pretenses. What you see is what you get. And what you get from me is a dedication to the job of the division director and to the ARRL, with which we would not have this wonderful hobby we all enjoy today. This is why I'm seeking your voice. Experienced leadership. It's more critical now than ever before to have solid, experienced leadership on the board of directors in order to ensure a stable financial future and a strategic plan for the ARRL going forward. The Great Lakes Division deserves a director who has experience, collaborative, innovative, and action-oriented methods to continue to accomplish these goals. And I am that person. I promise to work hard for you. This is why I'm seeking your voice. I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, and I would appreciate your vote as your next Great Lakes Division Director. Please don't hesitate to contact me anytime with questions or concerns that you may have. I'm here for you. My email is n8sy@n8sy.com. And again, you can find all the details about me and my future plans for ARRL on my website at n8sy.com. Okay, that's it. Now let's open it up for everybody's questions.
Okay, Scott, thank you very much for that. And I'm sure everyone appreciates that. I will say experience plus an understanding of the actual needs of amateur radio is absolutely essential for the success of the ARRL. And the success of the ARRL is paramount to the success of amateur radio. Before we get started with questions, I want to remind everyone that if you would like to submit a question to Scott, go to w8wky.org/Scott, SCOTT, and that will show you a link that you can click on and then type your question in. There's a form there for submission of questions. So again, that website is w8wky.org/Scott. So there you have it. While you're formulating your questions, I'm going to take the liberty of leading it off with a question of my own. And I think Scott kind of answered this already, but I'm going to give him a chance to zero in on this, and that is, Scott, in your opinion, what is the most pressing issue confronting the ARRL today, and how would you address it?
Right now, it's frequency allocation. Everybody and his brother wants our frequencies. And we do have a number of active people out there working to keep our frequencies and even maybe to grow a few. Those are already in the works, and they are already talking with the FCC as well as to our Congress. So that is already in the works and is already active.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. And again, the ARRL is absolutely instrumental to the continuance of ham radio. Let me remind you, for your questions, w8wky.org/Scott, SCOTT. All right, let's get started. How does voting for an ARRL director work? When will we receive ballots, and how do we vote?
Okay. Well, first off, if you were a member of the ARRL by September 10th of this year, you will be receiving a ballot in the mail. It should be coming out any day now. And in that little packet will be a 300-word essay by me as well as by my opponent. There will be a ballot in there, a paper ballot, and an envelope to mail it back, but you do have to provide the stamp. And there will also be instructions on how, if you want to save the stamp, how you can vote electronically this year. So those will be coming hopefully within the next few days. There should be, before the end of this week, we should start to see them in everybody's hands. So that's how you do it. Like I say, you have to be a member from September 10th prior in order to get that ballot.
All right, very good. I appreciate that. And the ballot will be forthcoming. I'm sorry, did you mention a date?
Well, it should be this week.
This week? Okay, that's very good. All right, again, the question link is w8wky.org/. Scott. Okay, let's keep her moving. What are your thoughts on the high-speed trading hullabaloo?
Hullabaloo.
Wow,
Yes, I saw that.
I didn't even
Quite
know that was a
frankly,
word. Using
I think somebody has lost their mind. If they had had any clue about how 20 meters really works, they would know that's not a good place for that kind of thing. Truthfully, they're going to have to, if it would get enacted, and it's very, very, very doubtful that it will, but if it would, there's going to be a lot of hullabaloo, if you will, to change the rules, because currently the proposal as it stands right now goes way beyond the bandwidth that we're allowed to operate there on 20 meters. So they would have to actually rewrite how all that bandwidth would work and all that. And that's something that the FCC has not been real willing to do. If you've noticed lately, they really have not been willing to change much at all in their rules, not only for us, but also for the commercial side of things. So I don't really think it's going to go anywhere. I truly don't. There's just a lot of interference. There has been a lot of already filed complaints that show that and document just how this thing would interfere with not only amateur radio, but it would interfere in the public sector quite a bit as well, and also into the police bands and that kind of thing, with just the amount of power and the bandwidth they're talking about and the amount of splatter that they would create. So I just don't see it happening.
All right. Well, and that did cause a hullabaloo, to
Yep.
use that word again. Uh, uh, okay, what is the status of some of the key rulemaking items the ARRL has been interested in? Notably, the issue of the symbol rate limitations and adding HF privileges to the technician class licenses.
Okay, that's really two questions in one, but that's okay. We'll take them both. The symbol rate, it looks like the FCC will eventually, within the next year, rule and probably rule in favor of increasing it, since every time we have a hurricane, that's what they're doing anyway. So it looks like that will probably come to fruition. We're the only country that has such a low measure for digital. And quite frankly, I foresee the FCC signing off on actually expanding that. The HOA bill, we did get 5 more Congress people this week to sign on to it. So with that, it looks like it's progressing quite well. It is sitting in committee right now, which is how a bill works. Once it's introduced, it is assigned to a committee. And from there, then the Congress people sign on to it. And then it gets eventually put out onto the floor. There is a possibility that by the end of the year, it may get tacked on to another bill. As we all know, this routinely happens to a lot of bills. They get tacked on to others right at the end of the year, and at midnight session that they have, where they're ready to go home and sign anything. So it is a possibility that it could be added onto a bill at the end of the year, but it's only a possibility. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. With Congress right now and the way they're all acting, I'm not sure how any of it's going to play out. So we'll just kind of have to keep watching. But like I did say, we did get a few more Congress folks to sign on to it over this past week, which is a positive thing.
Okay, and thank you for that, Scott. As we all know, the ARRL is certainly the amateur radio, for lack of a better word, lobby. They do all the political heavy lifting, which, whether you like it or not, is really part of today's world and keeping our frequencies. That's for sure. Okay, next question, Scott. You ready?
Sure.
All right, here we go. How can you, as a director, drive more transparency in the ARRL's lobbying efforts, speaking of lobbies, with the government? It seems as if there's a lot going on, but not a lot of details until someone like yourself talks about it verbally in a meeting, hamvention, etc.
Okay. When we talk about the transparency of some of these bills, we do have to be aware that sometimes we cannot be as transparent as we would like to be with putting out broadcasts about what's happening and so on. Only because, and especially in the HOA bill, for example, we did not want to put out anything ahead of time giving the CIA, I believe is what it's called, or CAI or whatever it is, the advantage of knowing what we were going to do and how we were going to introduce it ahead of time. We kind of wanted to spring that on as a surprise to them. That way they would not have a whole plethora of lobbyists already lined up just waiting for us to announce that. And we did surprise them with it, quite frankly. So sometimes being a little bit coy with the information does play to our advantage. Now, I will tell you, once we had it introduced onto the floor, we all of the directors and vice directors got the message out to everybody. In fact, it was after that was introduced onto the floor, it was even put onto the website, ARRL website, and so on. So we had no problem with transparency with what we were up to and why. But we did want to have that little bit of element of a surprise, just so that we could get it introduced easily and quickly onto the Senate and to the congressional floor. So sometimes transparency works in your favor, and sometimes it's best not to pre-announce what you're going to do. And the element of surprise sometimes really does work for your advantage.
All right. Well, and you have to be a bit of a politician at times. I'm and Scott, honestly, you're very good at that. You are very good at that, and that's a compliment, by the way. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we have in my magic hat here. Has the ARRL considered holding training on how the ham community could offer useful, constructive comments to the FCC? Whenever something comes up, hams embarrass themselves with ridiculous comments on filing. Like, I don't even want to, it's embarrassing to even bring some of this stuff up. But it's important that we make sure that we present a professional image anyway, not like we're a bunch of hayseeds, so to speak.
And that is an excellent point, and that is one I've already written down here, and we will introduce that to the committee because that really is a good, helpful one, and I think we can pick up on that. We have been doing a lot of learning videos lately. And that might be, and I think that would be an excellent one to pick up on and run with. You are absolutely right. I don't know who submitted the question, but it's a very good question, and one that I will take to the committee and see what we can do about actually making that happen. I like that idea.
All right, very good. And again, perfect example of you listening to the common folk, i.e. me.
Okay.
That was not my question, by the way. We're not broadcasting the calls of the people asking the questions, but as you said, it's a great question.
It is.
All right, we'll move on to how about dues, Scott? Raising the dues has been important from an immediate cash flow perspective. However, how does the ARRL plan to meaningfully increase its overall membership as a percentage of licensed I'm going to get my glasses. Next question.
Okay.
How does the ARRL plan to meaningfully increase its overall membership as a percentage of licensed amateurs in the U.S. and potentially a greater worldwide audience?
Yeah. That's also a great question, and I'm glad it was asked. Um, Something that I had talked to Dan Romanchek, KB8, or I'm sorry, KB6 NU, about is it's one of his major concerns as well. And it is one of mine. Quite frankly, my target goal for membership is not at 20% like it currently is. It's my goal is to get it to 25% and above. Why shoot and just say 25%? Let's say 25% and above. Now, how are we going to accomplish that? Part of it is going to be through clubs. We need to bolster the clubs and their ability to bring in the membership for us. One way I've already started on, and we already did, was with the club commission. We make it possible for clubs to actually get a finder's fee for new members, which is $15, and for renewing members, which is $5 for every renewal they get. The club will get $5. So kind of an incentive and a finder's fee for the clubs. But one of the things that I've noticed over my years of being a section manager and being the Great Lakes Division vice director was clubs do a very good job of educating people and getting them to their license stage and even testing them. But once they've got them tested and the guy has the CSCEs holding up in his hand, what happens? They walk out the door and the club never sees them again. Well, we need to change that. And how do we do that? We give a lot of extra incentive to clubs to hang on to them. One of them is just through this program I mentioned, and a number of others, which get them involved in remote stations by letting them operate remotely your station, that type of thing. That's one way. The other way is to have good incentive programs that clubs can show the benefits of belonging to ARRL. First off, the last good video we had was back in 2014, and that was the 100th anniversary video. That was the last good video that we had. It explained not only about ARRL, but it explained about amateur radio too. So we really need more things like that. And is that happening already? Yes, actually it is. In our learning center right now, you will find a number of different videos up there that are very useful for clubs to show and to demonstrate to their new members on what amateur radio is all about, all the nuances within amateur radio. Do I operate on 10 meters? Do I operate upper sideband, or do I operate lower sideband? Those are all questions that, yeah, we take for granted. And but a newbie doesn't know those things. So we need to get people back into clubs. Back when I first got licensed back in 1979, you almost had to depend on a club to get licensed. You really could not do it on your own. You really needed the club to help you walk through all of the information you needed to pass that test. So, and we've kind of gotten away with that, gotten out of that with the new testing modes and that type of thing we do, which is great. You no longer have to drive to Detroit to take your test. For those in Michigan that are watching this video, that was great for you, but the rest of us had to travel quite a ways. So it was one of those things where having the new VE system that we have today is a wonderful system, but I'm afraid that it has actually taken the club out of the factor now, and that we need to generate and get clubs more involved back into retaining those new people, not only so that they retain them within their own club, but they can also show them the advantages of being an ARRL member as well. So that was the first starting point for me.
Okay. And I was really surprised by the number of hams who get a license and then never operate.
Right.
That is a startling number of people.
Well, and part of that is that you have to have all the time in the world to get a station set up, and quite a bit of money if you're going to buy new equipment and that type of thing. And see, we really aren't. Now I know the word Elmering is not being used much anymore. It's now called mentoring. Is not being done by clubs. So the folks coming along, the first thing they do is and one of the factors that ARRL has found is everybody calls DX Engineering up and said, I just got my license. What kind of equipment do I need? Well, that's all great, but when you go through a club, you learn about all the various equipment, what you can get. You don't have to buy new, you can buy used. And we all know each other, and we know, what equipment will work well with these guys and that kind of stuff, the newbies and stuff. And we need to start bringing Elmering back more, that we really have kind of gotten away from. And that was big in clubs. Clubs loved to Elmer people a lot back in the 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s. But after that, it kind of faded away. And so we really need to bring all that back.
All right, Scott, and I absolutely concur. Absolutely concur. Another question on this topic, Scott. In online communities, notably on Reddit, Mastodon, and Discord, the ARRL VEC has a reputation of being very slow to get new licenses into the FCC system, and people asking questions about testing are driven to other VECs. While any newly licensed ham is good, the ARRL seems to have a problem with VE teams clinging to obsolete paper-based systems, which takes days and weeks to deliver to the ARRL. Will the ARRL VEC start pushing clubs to get modern with online submissions for near immediate licensing in days, not weeks?
Actually, the licensing has changed quite a bit in the past 6 months. Maria Soma, who heads up the ARRL licensing program, has agreed that by submitting a lot of this electronically versus through the mail does speed it up greatly. Our process, yes, is a little different. I'm also a Laurel VE examiner, and they do it 100% electronically, and it does go through pretty quickly. So the ARRL is starting to follow along with that path, and there has been a number of classes lately that have used the electronic version, submitted it electronically versus I forget what the test program is, but they're using the new test program that's online, and it's working quite well for them. So that's already started. And yes, it will take a little time to turn that around. But one thing I will say, in defense of all that paperwork that is generated, one of the things that we can brag about is ARRL has a very good record of, once it's submitted, it doesn't get rejected. And unfortunately, that's not always the case with the other VE exam tools that are out there. Sometimes they do get rejected for a lot of mistakes. Now, the new exam tools that is being used by ARRL and Laurel, and I think W5YI, seems to have cured a lot of that ill, where mistakes can be made and passed on. It won't let you make a mistake. I know the last Laurel exam that I was involved with, we actually kept entering something wrong, and it kept coming up red on the screen and would not allow us to advance. And it's the same testing tool that the ARRL now is starting to use. So that helps having that back check, if you will, so that once it's submitted, it's correct, so it goes right through and no issues. And the more that is no issues type thing, the more the FCC will accept and trust it to be correct right from the get-go. So I hope that answered the question. But yeah, we are going down that path now. It is a slow path, but we are taking that path.
Okay. And as an aside, I also am a Laurel VE and help the Cuyahoga Falls group on. I have helped the Ohio. Let me say this again, Cuyahoga Falls group, and it is interesting. But I think the ham community looks to the ARRL for leadership in all areas. And so that begs the question, how does the ARRL push club teams that VE teams that won't change? It's not really an ARRL process problem, as you just explained.
That's true. And as time goes on, they watch those teams and who's making the mistakes and that type of thing. I think that's really what you're alluding to more than anything is the teams that take forever to get the paperwork processed and into ARRL. And they're now monitoring that a lot closer than they were before. Those things are, they really do need to be monitored a lot closer. And I know some teams do take a while. I'm not sure why. Although I will say, is kind of an antidote to all this is when I first got licensed back in '79, it took 13 weeks to get my novice license. It was just, that was the process at the time. It took 12, 13 weeks for everybody. And now we've got it down to
Yes.
hours and days.
Yeah, I remember having to get my general class license by driving to Detroit. So it's a lot more streamlined than it used to be, that's for sure.
Yep.
Okay, I want to go back to the dues thing, if you don't mind, or the group wants to go back to the dues thing.
Sure.
Will the ARRL look at smaller, more frequent dues and cost changes to keep up with the inevitable increasing costs rather than ignore the issue for a decade or so, and then have another crisis and a monumental dues increase?
And that is a very good question. I'm glad it came up. As some of you know, I was the acting director at the July board meeting due to a fact that Dale could not attend. And as the bylaws do constitute, the vice director does fill in for the director at those kind of times. And so when I was sat down and this was all explained to me, and all the options were shown to me and everything, that was the first question out of my mouth. Back in 2016, when we had this last raise, they promised that it would be the only time that would ever happen, that it would be looked at a regular basis and evaluated each time, each year, and so on. And it really did not happen. So this time I kind of made a demand that it happen. So every year now, our financial group and the ANF committee will examine that. They will look at all the flow of money in and out and determine whether or not a smaller raise will be needed. Hopefully, inflation will come down, not only for our own pocketbooks, but also for ARRL, because that is truly what caused this issue in the first place was when COVID hit, inflation went through the roof. If those of you who are on retirement and Social Security, if you remember last year, you got the largest raise, cost of living raise ever done for Social Security because inflation was so high. Hopefully that will not be the case this next coming year or two, inflation, because it is election year next year. Hopefully inflation will drop down and that will make our dollar worth more, make it spend farther, and we can be more prudent about needing to come back to the membership for any kind of small incremental raises. So we never like to bug the membership about raises that much, but in this case, this is something that's absolutely needed. So yes, they will be reviewing it every year. And that is written within the raise itself, that was written within it. So it will be examined by the financial committee.
Right. And I gotta say, it's considering all the work that the ARRL does, it's a necessary. I won't even say evil. It's necessary.
Yeah.
Organizations need money to operate, and to
Yep.
operate well, you need money.
Yep.
Okay. Laying aside the topic of spectrum advocacy, there's a lot of debate online if the ARRL is a member-driven association or a products company. The ARRL, yeah, no, I'm not kidding. The
Mhm.
ARRL has a heavy focus on publications and asked in the survey if it should create more products. Which area would you prefer to see the ARRL focus on? Or what's your opinion on that whole bundle
Well,
of
again, that's a great question, and it goes both ways. We need the products. If ARRL wasn't producing the handbook, for example, who would? We're not competing with anybody for a handbook. So where would the handbook come from? And heavens to Betsy, we can't live our life without that handbook. I mean, let's face facts. That's where all that's the Bible for amateur radio is the handbook. You talk about the other books. The Antenna Anthology is another good book, but yet, if ARRL didn't write it, who would? We have several other good books out there that not only teach about the licensing program and so on, but it's also just good reading. So the products do produce an income and a decent income that might add for us as a sideline. And the membership also needs to be there too. As I said, I'm not looking for 20%. I'm looking for 25%. And further, I want to emphasize that not just 25%, but if we can go on higher, and we really should be. This organization really, for an organization that's been around for well over 100 years, we should be at 50% or greater. I don't know that that's doable. I don't know that that's even reality. However, that's where I think it should be. And in my own personal feeling with this, I've been a member even before I was a ham radio operator. I was a member of ARRL. Of course, you can't be a full member until you're licensed. So I wasn't a full member until 1979, and then I became a full member, and have been ever since. So figure out the amount of time that's been, and I have that love for ARRL. So it is a member driven, but it also needs something else out there. And books are a good way for us to get income. So
right, and I got to tell you, they're wonderful books.
they
Uh,
are.
and some innovation going on there as well, Scott. I really like the separation of the handbook into five smaller, much more manageable pieces of literature, and that is a very cool concept, and works really well.
Yeah, it
Uh,
does.
yeah. And I enjoy the ARRL stuff, and you want to. I mean, the SARA Club has branded apparel and stuff, but boy, I'll tell you, it's always nice to have a little ARRL stuff on the side as well. So that's a good thing, and I think what you described, there's a good balance between pillars essentially in the construction of the ARRL.
Yes, exactly. And for those of you who don't know, we do have 5 pillars that represent ARRL.
Okay, I don't know if anybody's going to ask you about those, but maybe we should talk about it. But there is an important question coming up here, Scott. Paper versions of QST and the other magazines.
Mhm.
That's been a hot topic since the dues and cost structure changes. I know,
Okay.
but can you explain what happened there and why it had to happen?
Can. Sure can. simply put, let's roll the clock back to 2020. This country went under, I want to say, went under an attack. We were all told to stay home. We were all told to stay away from people, stay 6 feet apart, and yada yada yada. For a good 3 years, we've been combating that. Now, when we did that back in 2020, it created a whole new market, and that new market was taken advantage of by one very notable company, which is Amazon. And because when we couldn't go to the store, when we couldn't go shopping, when we couldn't do things, what did we do? We stayed home and we bought things. We bought them online instead of going to the store and buying them. So what happens when you buy something online? It gets shipped to you. Well, what's it get shipped in? It gets shipped in this little brown box, right? Well, boxes are made out of what? They're made out of paper, brown paper. Well, the mills weren't prepared for the real big influx of shipping that Amazon and a few others like Walmart and so on and Target were going to do and had done and had already started to do. So what happened was Target and Walmart, who are big, huge customers of the paper mills, went to all the paper mills and said, we need to have you stop producing the white this white paper and start producing the brown paper for the corrugated boxes. So, and not only do we want you to stop, but we'll pay you a premium price if you do, and we'll buy all your stock. So you won't have to worry about, are we going to sell what we produced? We'll buy it, guaranteed. So what happened is all the mills here in the United States, pretty much all of them, switched over to brown paper so that the corrugated boxes could be made. What happened? Well, that then produced a shortage of the white paper used to make print magazines on. Where do you get it? Well, you have to go to a paper broker, and he has to go find it. Now, here's the thing. ARRL spends between $1.5 and $1.6 million every year printing QST. About a year and a half ago, it was about March, April of 2022, we had to come to the people and being transparent as we wanted to be. We came to the folks, the members, and said, hey, we're not getting paper. We don't know that we're going to make or be able to print the May QST. There may be a possibility that we won't. And that would be the first time in the full 100 and some odd years that ARRL has been around that it wouldn't have printed a magazine. But we went to our broker, we begged and we pleaded, and he begged and pleaded all around the world. Well, he found us enough paper to actually print the May edition, but it cost us an extra $43,000 to do that. Now let's face facts. $1.6 million is already being spent. Now you just added another $43,000 to the top of that. And that was for 1 month printing. Now, we weren't guaranteed paper after that. We're still going to a paper broker and paying whatever we can. I mean, we're trying our best to keep the cost down. But because of inflation driving everything up, and because there's very little white paper, and it's got to be shared amongst all those magazines that are being printed out there. So the paper is going to the highest bidder. So we never know from month to month just how much money we're going to have to spend. So a decision had to be made. What do we do? How are we going to handle this? So we looked at all of the options. One of those options was cut LTW off or start charging for LOTW to make up for the difference. Not a good option. We didn't want to do that. And some people don't realize that LOTW is actually a free service, not only to ARRL members, but to the whole world. That little unit that we call LOTW is used by thousands and thousands and up to, I think, almost 1 million people around the world. And so we didn't want to cut that off. So what other service would we cut off in order to finance printing QST? Well, we looked at it and there really wasn't anything that was doable. We didn't want to cut services. So the only other thing is to raise dues. Well, in order to keep going, printing QST for every member, which would have been 151 plus thousand members, we would have had to raise dues to $75 or more. That's not an option either. So we kind of took the middle of the road option that said, when we did the survey, we asked folks, what do you think of digital? Will you accept digital only? That type of thing. And in that survey, 39% of the people said they'll do digital only. Well, 43% of the people said, no, I want my printed magazine. Now, the remaining percentage said, don't care one way or the other. Whatever you want to do, do. Well, we took that along with the 39% and said, that's really the majority. Okay. So we said, okay, we do have to raise dues because inflation came along and it has made it impossible for us to hold costs down any more than what we've already done. We had to raise dues $10. But we knew that if we just cut the magazine off entirely and not print it at all, that wasn't an acceptable deal either. So we said, okay, let's look at what is fair? What is a fair price? What can we live with without damaging ARRL, without hurting the membership too much? And we come up with the $25 a year, which works out to just a freckle over $2 a month. Now, I realize, everybody's saying, well, okay, it's now the dues are $59 plus the 25. That's like $84. And that's a lot of money for a magazine. Well, Gary, you and I talked prior to going live about magazines and how much they cost. And quite frankly, $10 a month is about the going rate or more for a magazine today on the shelf. Take a look at any Barnes and Noble, go to their store and look at the magazines and see how much they cost. They'll range anywhere from $10 to $25 to $30. That's just the cost. Now, the one other thing I want you to look at while you're at Barnes and Noble, take a look at how many magazines are actually on the racks now. A lot of magazines have gone completely digital or non-existent. Now, let's look at the magazine that comes out that is, I won't say equal, but I will say is a ham magazine, CQ magazine. Let's take a look at that. For digital and print, like is what we're asking for, it's $62.50 a year. I was a member of CQ magazine for many years. In fact, my subscription just ran out recently. The last magazine I got, which I received just about a month ago, was for the March edition. That's how far behind they are. Quite frankly, they're having as much trouble, if not more, than we are, ARRL is, to get paper, and they're struggling even more. And I will ask this, what other service does CQ Magazine give you? Nothing. As I mentioned, ARRL has many different programs. If you're an ARRL member, they'll renew your license for you. LOTW is a free program. The QSL Bureau is a free program for an ARRL member. You get a huge discount on ARRL liability insurance for your club. You get a huge discount for ARRL fire and theft insurance on your personal equipment. Those are just a few of the sideline businesses that have connected with ARRL as an ARRL benefit. You don't get that with CQ Magazine. You don't get that with DX Engineering. You don't get that with R&L Electronics. You don't get that with anybody else. You don't get any of the protection that you get from the people who are trying to steal our frequencies from anybody but ARRL. So yes, it hurts. It does. And I understand that. And I get that. I'm on a fixed income too. So I get that. But I will say, for those who absolutely have to have a printed magazine, and there are some, and they have legitimate reasons, and that's fine, it's still being offered. We just ask that you pay $25 a month or a year extra. Now, I will put this caveat in there. You get 4 digital magazines every month available to you. 2 of those magazines, NCJ and QEX, have been around for a number of years. But if you wanted to get the printed QEX and NCJ magazines, you paid an additional $40. And that's a program that's been in existence for over 10 years. Most people didn't realize that. But we have over 22,000 subscribers paying $40 a month for just those 2 magazines alone. So 25, I think it's fair. Hopefully we will never have to do that again. And hopefully we can continue to print that magazine and we won't have to go exclusively digital. But those are times that we just never know that we're going to have. I hope that's answered the question.
It certainly answered it for me, Scott. And we did talk about the cost of magazines, and really $10. If you go into a bookstore or a magazine rack and pick one up off the counter, it's going to be at least $10, as you mentioned. And the other thing, the subscriptions to magazines that provide content, not legislative support, et cetera, it's $50. It's $50 for a subscription, as we talked about before. So I get it, and quite honestly, I'm good with not killing any more trees than we need to be perfectly honest with you. Okay, still on the magazines, Scott. Has the ARRL considered moving away from a traditional magazine format and towards a multi-platform, subscription-based article content publishing strategy for the magazines, QST, QEX, and CJ, etc., which would allow for more and interactive content with more authors and not be constrained by printed page considerations, or potentially add something like that on a low-cost media type format?
That's an interesting question, and one that I've written down and I will take to the board with me to ask. I don't have the answer to that one right now. I don't know if they've been looking at that or not. I had a chat with Becky Schoenfeld, who is the senior editor for QST, and I know that they have been investigating into a number of different formats, but I don't know that I can answer that intelligently right now because I just don't have the answer. So, but we will take that to the board and find out.
Okay, it's just a little forward-looking question there. And maybe there's possibilities for the future. Maybe it's a value add, possibly.
It might be.
Or, and maybe less expensive. I don't know. I don't know.
No, it's a very valid question, and I really like that one. So I will bring that to the board and see. In particular, I will take that to the editing staff and see what they say. It may be something they're already looking at.
Okay. We received a statement from a viewer to this stream, and here it is. I'm going to ask you what your reaction to this statement is. It says, ARRL publications have lost much of their importance and quality. I prefer RSGB's Radio Communications Handbook over the ARRL handbook. Many ARRL books today are weak in content and appear to have been just written to bring income and not to be useful. The web is a better source of information than the ARRL publications. And again, your reaction to that statement, Scott.
Well, yes, I've seen the RSGB magazines, and I even have a couple of their books. Um, I guess I guess it's your point of view on that one. I regard the ARRL handbook as purely the Bible of amateur radio, and always have. Is it what folks expect? I suppose some folks expect more out of that than what they're receiving, and that's a possibility. I know that every year it does change. There has been a lot of research done on what we currently have out there and what we're and making it a little bit different and that type of thing, and adding a lot more technical information into it. Now, when we always have to be cautionary when you do things like that, because one man's tea is another man's brew, and so therefore, some folks will say, well, now it's too technical, I don't understand it, and why should I buy it because it's way over my head. So we have to be very, very careful with just how far do you go. And it's always good, and it's one of the main reasons why I subscribed to CQ magazine. It's always good to have more than one source to resort to when you're looking for those real technical type questions, because you get both sides of the story and different points of view, which sometimes really helps a lot.
Okay, very good, Scott. And I have other publications too. I was thinking, I think it's the Radio Handbook. Is that Bill Orr put that out?
Yes.
And I think the latest one I have is like the 22nd edition, which I like that book. But the beauty of the ARRL handbook is that the league updates that every year.
Mm-hmm.
And the latest and greatest is then included, which is you're not going to find that in Bill Orr's book.
Well, I always encourage everybody to do one other book too, and it's very difficult nowadays to get. And it's it's anywhere between the 1927 to 1945 Boy Scout handbook. You will find a tremendous amount of information about amateur radio, for one, inside that book.
Yeah,
it's really quite amazing. But if you go to Hamfest and you look around, every once in a while, you'll find one of those old Boy Scout handbooks. Grab a hold of it and don't let go of it if you do find one.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Maybe at the next Hamfest.
There you go.
All right. Okay, Scott, we're going to lay the last question of the evening on you right now. So brace yourself. If an organization is not online in 2023, it almost might as well not exist, especially for generations of people under 40. The ARRL's website is very dated, and the new membership/store system isn't very user-friendly. Additionally, many of the ARRL-related efforts, such as newsletter publications by clubs, focus on a much older demographic. Is the ARRL looking at a modern media strategy to bring and retain members from the younger generation?
Yes, we are. It's already in the works. It's already started in the Learning Center. There's a number of videos in the Learning Center right now that target the younger group. In fact, I will tell you, that's one of the things that we are very deeply concerned with. The silver-haired folks, we're aging out. and the younger ones aren't coming along as we wish they would. And so yes, they are targeting that. And like I say, the Learning Center has already started to do that. There's a number of videos up there already targeting that age group and getting them going on how to come in on a club and not necessarily take over, but help out where they can.
Okay. All right. I got to tell you, Scott, the youth forum at Hamvention was stunningly remarkable. And if you have any doubts about the younger generation, you needed to be at that youth forum because it was magnificent and those kids were truly, truly amazing. Anyway, thank you for that answer, and we certainly appreciate that. That was the last question we had, Scott. I'm going to wrap this up here and give you an opportunity for your final comments to the group. And I do want to say we certainly appreciate you being here tonight and taking the time to address the questions from SARA and others.
Okay, well, I do thank you, and I thank the club and all the members for giving me this opportunity. It's a great honor, and I do really appreciate it. In conclusion, I just want to again say that I'm very passionate about not only our hobby here as amateur radio operators, but also the ARRL. I've been a member since before I was even a licensed ham, and I have never strayed from that over the years. Do they always do everything I want them to do? No. And I don't think any organization can ever make that boast that they've done everything that all their membership ever wanted to do. I will say that there is a lot of hardworking, very dedicated folks who are working to try to get us out of this hole that we find ourselves in. And yes, part of it, is our own fault for not taking a more deep concern about all of the issues throughout the United States that we have right now that's caused some of the financial problems that we find ourselves in. So, but I will tell you, there's a lot of great, smart, very smart folks working on how do we rectify this and keep ARRL and its membership surviving and thriving throughout the 2020s and 30s and 40s and 50s. So, but in conclusion, really, I do want to say that the Great Lakes Division does deserve a director who is experienced. One of the things that I do bring to the table is that actual experience that you just can't walk onto the board and get any other way. You actually have to walk the walk, and then you can talk the talk. And I do seek your vote, and I already have the club's endorsement, which I dearly love that the club did that for me, and I do appreciate it. So, and again, if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact me anytime. I'm here, I'm available, and I'm for all of you. My email and phone number are listed on page 15 of every QST for the past 3 years. So please feel free to contact me. If you have other questions about, want to just take a look around, I encourage you to take a look around on my website, N8SY.com. So that's it. I thank you all for your patience and for your support. Gary?
All right, Scott, thank you very much for that. And I in response to what you just said, no organization can satisfy everyone's individual particular needs. And no one in any organization always agrees 1,000%. As a matter of fact, that's why we have an election going on right now.
Right.
So I do again appreciate you taking the time to address these concerns of folks. And we've already said that we are behind you 1,000%. I hope that everyone does understand that you just don't walk into an organization and start saying, okay, we're going to change this, that, and the other thing. It doesn't work that way. It never has. It never will. That's why we need experience and we need know how to change those things. So, Scott, best of luck to you. We appreciate everything you've done for the ARRL and the clubs and ham radio in the past. And we're looking forward to the things that you do in the future. With that, we'll close this down. And I do want to say thank you to everyone who participated today. And the man behind the curtains, N8SY, Jason McCormick, appreciate you turning the dials there, Jason. So thank you for that. And again, everybody else who participated tonight. With that, my name is Gary Shorter. The call is AA8CS, and we'll be clear.